Good viewer, you are watching Xirtus. This is because Xirtus makes you feel good, makes you feel fulfilled. You are enjoying this. You will continue to watch Xirtus for a long time to come. You want to subscribe to Xirtus, and you will. You will like and subscribe and share. You will tell your friends. Tell your friends about Xirtus. Your friends will come to like Xirtus, much as you are liking this right now, as we speak. Thank you for subscribing to Xirtus. See, that was easy.
Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.
What up, everybody? We've been here the whole time. We were just talking about you behind your back, but welcome to SYNCTANK. How's it going?
Have you been gaining weight?
Oh my god. So basically the world is in peril, and I cannot find Gaia, the spirit of the earth, who is, encapsulated the power of earth, wind, water, and fire in the rings of several
Dude, I love the zone of interest haircut you got going. That's nice.
Oh, thank you. It's on the way to Freakazoid. I was trying to keep it. But actually, there's not a lot of change to the hair. It's just like without a beard, like all of a sudden, it has a whole different vibe. I can tell.
Yeah. I do like how often you just have like a surprise beard or like a surprise mustache, and no one knows, and it comes and goes.
I feel like, do you remember when Julian Assange used to be the man of many faces? It was like right before he was famous. He went through an amazing like transition period. Like Julian Assange, like 2012, I guess, or something like that.
Dude, was Julian Assange? I'm probably wrong about this, but was it Julian Assange who said, "I am the lightning rod"? Do you remember that? I felt like that was him.
Cuckoo.
It was like, I felt like it was like when WikiLeaks like first started and he had like some interview, but it could have been somebody else who was doing something similar. I'm not sure.
I am the lightning rod. It's very.
I'm the lightning rod. Yeah.
That's very Ken Kesey. I'm the lightning rod. Julian Assange. I know, like Ken Kesey said, like he'd rather be a lightning rod than a seismograph, but lightning
rod. Yeah,
man. Is that the Kurt
Cobain lightning rod? Kurt Cobain was Kurt Cobain.
I'd rather burn out than fade away or something.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've never watched that.
That's a little different though. I mean, because to burn out, like, I remember this time, Steve Jobs talked about making a dent in the universe or whatever. But that's different than saying, I don't want to be a recording of an event. I want to be the event. I don't want to be like.
I don't know. It sounds like potato tomato a little bit, because it's like I want to be the thing that gets to touch God. I want to be able to like make direct communion with this immense higher power, because I'm a special snowflake, so I deserve to be the lightning rod.
Right, but
No.
MLK said I'm a candle, and he was like basically like if you blow me out, I'll just get relit. Meaning you can do anything to try and get rid of me. The
I'll find
ultimate
another place to
message
score, man.
Yeah, the lightning rod is something that draws this like the strength, I guess, but a lightning bolt, maybe that's the Ken Kesey version. Ken Kesey lightning bolt. I'd rather be a lightning rod. No, okay, yeah, I'd rather be a lightning rod. That's interesting. Not a bolt, not a bolt, not to be a lightning bolt, to be the rod.
Yeah.
All right, no, I surrendered to your point, Thomas. That's basically, yeah, he wants to be a vehicle, a medium of God. That's crazy. I had no idea.
Yeah, and then he's like, "No more acid tests. These things, they're done. We tried that. We know."
Way to pull the ladder up behind you, Dick.
Pandas are fake. Monthly tithing. All right. Do you guys have thoughts on that? That was something recently I saw someone had reposted the interview I did with Owen Benjamin. His whole thing with like fake pandas. What do you think? Or what do you think
I
about?
mean, if you subscribe to simulation theory, then you could just say everything's fake and you'll always be right.
Yeah, I feel like everything. The whole thing though that genetically modified bears. What do you think?
Was this just a way to divert the algorithm away from panda eyes?
I hope so.
I like that idea.
I hope that's the.
I mean, I don't like it, but I
no,
see
but that makes sense, right? That it would take the place. I don't know, putting it out there.
I appreciate it. My thought though is just like it's a great conspiracy because the Jesuits gifting pandas to China, this like post-Manchurian China that wasn't anything to do with the historical China, and that's why these confused bears are uncomfortable in nature because they don't know what to do. They're just like, what? We're not real, but they are. They're maybe not always just dudes in suits, I guess, is my point. Like they're probably like
animatronic. Yeah, I don't know, man.
Well, the Chinese did have animatronic things.
I'm not saying there couldn't be animatronic pandas. I'm just saying, are all pandas animatronic? It's questionable to me. And just be honest. My knee jerk is like, yeah.
Are some animatronics pandas?
Right.
Yeah. Well, what have you guys been up to this week? I haven't really.
Oh my god, dude! I was on the fish hook, as you know, being from Santa Cruz. It's a very
that's
sharp
right.
turn. I was like, I fucking peeled out on Dead Man's Curve. I was going the speed limit. My tires were too bald. Turns out my brakes don't actually engage like they should. Like the back brakes aren't engaging, and it was like it had been hot the day before, and then it was like it was raining.
Up here. Let's
see if you got the Santa Cruz fish hook from above or something.
Highway, not that fish hook, you guys. The highway fish hook. Here we go. Okay, this is what.
Yeah,
let's get. Yeah, like I don't know if people understand this about Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is like an abominable, unnatural yet chaotic result of nature trying to reclaim. Like basically what happened was a bunch of pedophiles tried to conquer this place and they named it Branciforte, and there was an earthquake and these jarring cliffs that swallowed a church and a hellmouth opened up, right? And that's what Buffy the Vampire Slayer is based on. Okay, point is we have one major like a highway, right, which is 17, which is 0 plus 17 is 18. There's like the whole bunch of 3 6s. The holy number, but we call it the fish hook, which is like every morning and every evening and every day if you're trying to go into town, right? Because you have to understand, like most people don't live in the town. Some people do, but a lot of people live in like the green trees, in the trees, right? So like you have to enter into the town, you have to deal with this fish hook thing. And this fish hook thing is where you're going like 80, 60, whatever it is. And then you have to go like that.
Yeah. So I was going the speed, but then right at the end of this thing, I did over a 180 and I was looking at the traffic like coming at me and I like had my hands out like, oh my God, please stop. Don't be a pile up or whatever. And so cars were coming along
people die here all the time. People die here every day, maybe every other day, but pretty much every day. So you're always like, oh, I hope that I'm not in the pileup right now.
Yeah.
Not just that. You're like, please don't make me die to this song.
Right. So my car wouldn't start after that. So I was like shouting at the guy who was in front of like my car won't start. And so he came out and helped push it. Another guy pulled off on the road too, and he came and helped me push it to the side. But it was crazy because like I was like had other cars coming at me coming off of 17. So it's like I had to like turn around and get on here, and then eventually, you know, highway patrol came. I was able to get AAA, and I couldn't even turn around because the traffic was going, it would not let up at all. There's no like no gap in the traffic. So I just like had to get towed to the local gas station. Now my car is done. I've been driving the same vehicle since I was 18. I'm 42. It's done. Like they told, like when I went to get the general inspection afterwards, they were like, dude, like this is dangerous to drive. So that's it. So if you got a vehicle I can drive, Andreas, or know anybody, that would be great.
I'm trying to sell a Cherokee, actually.
Really?
4x4, my dad's old Cherokee. So you can look into that if you want.
We'll discuss this after the show.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you were quick thinking enough to put your hands up, like, because I know that helps a lot if you ever get situation.
Does it really? Are you being sarcastic? You're being sarcastic.
It's nice to put your knees on the steering wheel and just like widen up. But no, the fishhook's messed up, dude. I just wish people understood that this was like, I want to sell t-shirts that say I survived the 17 or something like that. Yeah. It's just so crazy. I can't believe it. It makes you like not, it makes you traumatized to just like go outside. I remember when I got to Bolivia and I did the death road. And I just kept thinking, like, this is not as bad as the 17. I
want to talk about.
I
want to talk about when we had. I was going to say John Phil Ryan, but no, Alex. When we drove Alex to San Jose, and you took the back roads, like over by your house, I'm like, and the way Andreas drives, like for me, I'm familiar with there. I'm totally cool. I'm chilling. But like Alex like told us, he's like, dude, I'm fucking terrified right now. Just like in all honesty. Because the way Andreas drives in the middle of the night, is this okay to say? This is whatever. Yeah, no, he just ignores the line to go around the curve. So he's just like, whatever the fastest route. So you're almost like going straight, even though the road is curving. Because they're just like, he just makes it work. But the thing is that he is paying attention. He has his brights on. It's like there's a method to it, and I know the method, and so like I'm cool with the method. But it's funny because Alex is not from Santa Cruz, and he was just like not like comfortable with that kind of like approach to that road. But you know the road so well, it's not the same. I do it more in Corralitos area. I can do that with like Green Canyon, but like it's whatever. I'm sorry.
That never happened. Hey, look, Esoteric Eddie. Wait. Let's do we should do like a, hold on. Here you go. Hey, everybody. It's Esoteric Eddie.
What's up?
How's it going, bro? Good to see you. What's up?
Good to see y'all, man. Good to see y'all.
Dude, so it's been a minute. Last time we were together, you talked a bit about Satanism and the misnomer. Actually, it's funny. It comes up all the time now, talking about Lucifer Cagliari. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lucifer of Cagliari.
Finally, I'm getting it. Like, it took me a minute to memorize. But then also, just this idea of, Phosphore Venus, everything else. So that was the last thing we talked about. But you put out a book since then. What have you been up to?
Oh man, I've been up to a lot. I just gotta let y'all know. I came down with a fever earlier.
Dude, he's got a fever for cowbell.
I probably sound like shit and look like shit, but
you're okay. But you had a glitch for a second. That's okay. That's all right.
Should we be wearing masks for this?
Yeah, you should.
Yeah,
nah, man. But yeah, I've been up to a lot. I think the last time we spoke was like the summer-ish of 2023 or 2. I don't fucking know, man. It's been a long time, but yeah, I've been through a lot, man. I've been working a lot of documentaries. I dropped my 3rd book since we last spoke, the Crystal Lattice Mind Illusion, which is more on like consciousness and the simulation theory. Jeez. I'm way more sick than I thought.
Oh my gosh, he's gonna get sick to the screen. You guys get yourselves vaccinated as soon as you can.
I got my 9th last week, so I'm good.
Awesome.
Who's your publisher?
Show us another.
No, but yeah, man, I dropped my 3rd book late last year. And
who's your publisher?
Self-published through Amazon's creator program.
Mm-hmm. It works. Yeah, the print ads needed,
Yeah.
Used to be back in the day, you'd buy a fucking big old box of them and try and get them in bookstores or something, but you can actually just like someone buys it and they print it right then and there. Yeah.
Well, Esoteric Eddie's doing a service, bro. I mean, kind of similar to, some of our friends. He's been putting out informative information for ages and some pretty sweet t-shirts and all that. But also he's got some books. That's what I was talking about before, because when I first had you on the show, I think you're talking about the Lucifer Mystery Revealed had just come out, and you had done Anunnaki Theorem, talking about, the idea of what the ancients believed about the cosmogony of reality, but then also this misnomer that emerges, particularly in European folklore, that we, not quite Christianity, like that refers to this new sort of like Luciferian being. And then we talked a little bit yesterday about like Steinberg, Ahriman, Lucifer, this sort of map, right? This sort of idea of like Lucifer versus Ahriman, and the Christ is the balance in between idea. But like Lucifer is this idea of like perfection architect, or this archon thing. And then, so now this is your new book, Crystal Lattice Mind Illusion.
Yes, correct.
Epic. So this is about simulation theory. So what are you thinking, and what are you pushing on that?
So that book came to me as a download. After I dropped the Anunnaki Theorem book, I was kind of in between projects, and I was trying to decide what my next project was going to be. And the idea that I had was actually to write a book on Werner von Braun and his like the only idea that I had in mind. And then
Wait, what did you got glitched out when you're saying Werner von Braun and his what?
Werner von Braun's prophecies about the false alien invasion.
Oh.
Yeah, I have notorious bad Wi-Fi. I'm trying to get that figured out. I live on a farm, so yeah, man. But yeah. So I that was the book that I was gonna write, and one day I was at work. I'm a plumber full time. I own my own plumbing company now, and I was underneath the sink fixing this faucet, and I was already in the state of mind of thinking about like conscious. I mean, I love the topic of consciousness and psychedelics. I always have, so I've always been intrigued in that anyway. But I was thinking about Walter Russell's book and his work on the theory of one and light and all that stuff. So I was already in that mind frame, and I was underneath the sink, and out of nowhere, I just got the download. It just hit me, and I saw the name of the book.
So it was a synchronicity, literally.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, it hit me right there in that moment. I saw the title of the book. I saw like the colors of the front cover, and I pretty much already knew what it was going to be about. I didn't know word for word, but I already had everything in my mind, and I was like, all right, well, I guess this is what it's going to be. And I set off on that journey, and from conception to publishing, it only took me about 5 months.
Awesome. So, but it's basically about simulation theory, or how do you frame it?
Oh man, this is embarrassing. I'm like so sick right now.
Yeah.
But
next time, don't like do like 9 lines of blow right before a podcast. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, Donald Trump and Hillary, man.
That's actually medically used to stop this kind of an issue, to be honest.
I plead the fifth. Yeah. So the crystal lattice mind illusion is a term that I came up with to basically describe the simulation theory as I see it. And the crystal lattice mind illusion is 2 parts. So the crystal lattice part of it, and there's a full-on explanation and definition in the book, of course, and you can also learn about it in the documentary version, which is on my channel. So the crystal lattice part of it has to do with the fact that our entire physical universe and reality is built off of fractal codes, very hard set mathematical, geometric, and fractal codes. And that's evident all around us, whether that's in the Fibonacci sequence, just the abstract geometries around us. And one of the simple examples that I use, and it's very simple and kind of silly, but I think it's well overlooked. And that example is the fact that it takes, give or take a few days, about 9 months for a baby to be born. That's a very hard set mathematical geometric program system.
Right, right,
So it
right.
almost takes like 10 months a lot of the time.
And dude, if you're gonna talk about like the fractal nature of existence, the very fact that people come out of people is pretty much like that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, man. So like all around, and I start the book off with a quote.
Oh,
Awesome quote. I don't have it word for word in my mind right now, but paraphrasing, he says that archetypes and the mind is what crystals and the crystallization process is to what, archetypes are what to are to
well,
the
they're
mind.
the equivalent in an internal way to what is
Exactly.
externalized in the expression of crystal. Yeah, I dig that.
Yeah, exactly. So I start off the book with that quote, and that quote pretty much, if you understand it and it's the depth of it, the complexity of it, you pretty much understand the entire book. And so that's the crystal lattice part of it. Our entire physical world is built off of hard set mathematical, geometric, abstract equations that express themselves as what looks like chaos, but really it's not. Everything is actually very divinely set. So that's the crystal lattice part of it. Now, the mind illusion part of it has to do with the fact that we, for one, are unaware of our mind and body connection. Most of us are unaware that we have a mind body connection, and even worse than that, we are taught to ignore it, and we are taught to not recognize the mind and body connection. So the mind illusion part of it is the fact that most people walk around thinking that they're just one thing. I'm just Eddie. I'm just this one unit, but that's not true.
Right.
Even the body is made up of hundreds of moving parts, if not billions, if you want to count all the cells. And the body is just one part of what,
Word.
as hard as it is to wrap our mind around, the mind also has compartments. It's not just one thing. It actually has a few compartments as well. And so those two together are what I call the spirit machine. So we are a spirit machine, and our creator put us here in this simulation to utilize the mind and body connection to toggle an interface here. But as I get into towards the end of the book, not to rush, my presentation or whatever we're going to talk about, but towards the end of the book, I talk about the reptilian brain network, and that's basically, what all of us in the conspiracy theory community talk about, the Illuminati, reptilians, the shadowy elite, all that. The reptilian brain network is basically all of the institutions in our world that attempt to suppress our mind and body connection, and through all of the various ways.
Are you going full like simulation parasite theory then? Like the idea that you've got it right? Like there's like parasites that are controlling your sensory perceptions.
I mean, that's definitely true too. I don't get so much into the parasite part of it, but I wrote an essay for a cool magazine out in Florida. Shout out to the homie Corey and 7 Story Hotel. I wrote an essay for one of I think their second issue, and I did talk about that idea in that essay, how there's a war for our mind, and it's not just the government that's after our mind, but there are
Kennedy.
parasites. Yeah, there are parasites that are out there for our mind too. So life is just a war, really. The moment we're born, we're up against nature in every single way. And so that's probably a different topic. But in the book specifically, I talk about how the reptilian brain network, all the various institutions of our world attempt to suppress our mind and body connection, basically by degrading the quality of our mind, the quality of our thought process. And I call it the reptilian brain network because we have what is called the reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain, although that whole science has kind of been debated over the years, it still stands that there is a part of our brain that that mainly operates from fear and lust and survival. And so when you're going through those like basic rudimentary energies and thought processes, you are operating from the reptilian brain, the reptilian part of your brain, the more
Right, the most medial
rudimentary.
part of your corpus callosum, you have the pineal gland. But isn't it true that the way that the reason why it's called the reptilian brain is because the way that the pineal gland exists on reptiles, that it's so prominent in the top of their head? So it's not like actually at the core of the brain like we have it. Like we have the pituitary that rests in the front, and then we have the pineal in the center. So when it's said that when you get into a fight or flight kind of energy, all your attention span just like narrows down to the moment. So in a way you're being present, but you're also in a state of vulnerability that's you're fighting it. So it's kind of like, like laughing and crying are like part of a continuum, just like pain and pleasure are. It's like it's actually there's a polarity that exists where it's like if you caress your skin and you're like, oh, that feels good, and then you drive your nails in, it's really just a continuum of the same thing where you're like, oh, that's too much. Like too much pleasure becomes pain or whatever. But it's like it's weird with being happy and being sad, because it's like it takes so much more stress to experience the sadness than it does to smile. There's a thing that they say about, does it take more muscles to frown than smile? I don't know if that's true, but I know that when you're actually crying, like all the tension that exists there. But yeah, it's still part of a
that makes
polarity.
it only makes sense because people who frown end up having less facial like wrinkles when they're older. So maybe there's something to that, I guess. But there's but the idea that the triune brain theory is true, I don't know. Like, I'm not necessarily convinced that like the brain root, like that's a 1960s theory that they don't really teach as much anymore. But I mean, the idea is interesting because of philosophically, you got like Thomas Jefferson saying, if you want to duel someone, first count to 10. If you still want to duel someone, count to 100. If you still want to duel someone, set it for 10 days from now.
Right.
Like that kind of thing. And then that'll put you in your mammalian brain. That was his idea.
Right.
So there really is this interesting idea that we're talking about, that instinctual brain. I don't know if it's fair to call it the reptilian brain biologically.
Are we saying that like procrastination is like a high level order of thinking?
I'm saying that monkeying around is not instinctual, so if you're using your
misuse of an organ, right? So you have all kinds of misuse of things in your life, and then it like translates to what's at the center of it all, like in terms of your perceptual reality matrix. Like you're literally like projecting a reality. So I don't think like because we have no basis for comparison because we exist in our paradigm. So it's like really hard to like consider that there could be a completely alternate way of relating to everything, like even just like perceptually. I think that's what Philip K. Dick was kind of getting into too. But your crystal thing makes a lot of sense because like, in Kabbalah, you have the Sephirot or singular Sephira. And that word, actually, people think it relates to sphere, like etymologically, but it doesn't. It does, however, relate to sapphire. So sapphire is from the same etymological root as the Sephirot. And those are the places of depth that make up the Kabbalistic tree. But the Kabbalistic tree is so often represented in a really misleading way, which started in the Middle Ages, where you have just like this kind of two-dimensional representation. And really, this is something that's like twisting into form. And the way it translates in the human body is it starts like at the center of your head, and then it twists around from right to left. And they say that Keter, the crown, the center of it all, which you would relate to as the medial part of the brain, it has two right sides, they say. So there's like, it's not what it appears when we're representing it,
Yeah, I mean, here's the way, like, so here's the theory. The lizard brain is the stem of the brain. The mammal brain is the limbic system, and the human brain is like the surrounding abstract systems. And
very presumptuous, this diagram here.
I think so. I think it is. And in a lot of ways, it's also probably missing out on like what's true about the lizard brain and the bird brain.
Well, this also is, I mean, and this is just a theory, but this seems to bypass the whole quantum leap of intelligence where it was like literally smoother, like people had smoother brains. And then there was some stoned ape theory, I'll just say it out loud, but there was some kind of catalyst that created this quantum leap in intelligence, which kind of corresponded to surface area, which means more wrinkles in the head sac.
That is kind of actually part of this theory. Actually, that's part of the 1960s triune brain theory. Is this idea of
they did the ball sack theory too?
So you've got so if it's like, so if you're in Santa Cruz in the 60s taking classes with the character that Jeff Goldblum is playing in Jurassic Park, right? Then what you're learning about and fighting about is the meat theory, heat theory, or this like stone theory. There's probably a better. Can think of a drug rhyme that goes with meat and heat. But that's the way it would have been, because people are like, oh man, it's the mushrooms. And other people are like, oh man, it's the meat and the omega oils. And other one's like, oh no, it's like the heating of the food, which is breaking down and this argument is crazy. Like, people were literally fighting about whether or not that's how people evolved. And I think it's probably fair to say there's a lot of different ways that we evolved, and that it's not necessarily one atom, which is like, maybe it's an Adamu. It's like a species of, because we have gene flow between Neanderthal, and there's probably certain kinds of humans which were more, their brains were more focused on certain kinds of things because of certain kinds of environmental conditions, whether it be art or whether it be survival or something like that. And yeah, maybe all of those sequences seem to emerge. I mean, it is pretty weird that a squid mutated completely separate from our species, from animals species so much earlier, yet evolved eyes very similar to the eyes that other animals have completely on its own, right? So is it possible that it's consuming genes, or it's somehow how is it getting those ideas? Right? So I don't know. I like it. I like the idea that like it's a dog eat dog world, and that somehow we're like adapting from learning from each other. I mean, that makes sense. It would be crazy if nature didn't learn from itself, right? Like,
right. Well, the reason why I'm saying it's a misuse of the organ is because we're relating to things with fight or flight that aren't actual threats, like to ourselves, to our physical selves. So like that's like the problem of ego identification, like identifying with the thought forms as though they are in fact you, and not just like an extension or some periphery of you, So that's where it gets twisted. And then because you're activating an organ for this purpose, that it's like it's not going anywhere. It's like there's no reason for this right now. It happens to all of us at different times, right? But yeah, no, it's just. But then at the same time, you're like, well, what gets activated in states of meditation or deep sleep? And it seems like it doesn't seem like I've seen this communicated, where there's in the stages of sleep, like everyone experiences paralysis at a certain point in the night, but not everybody does it lucidly. And if you experience it lucidly, it can be, for many people, probably most people, terrifying. Because if you're like your breathing is elongated and your body is frozen, it can. And a lot of like representations of demons, like you'll see this in old paintings where there's like kind of like the crazy fucking succubus above them, like communicating like what sleep paralysis can feel like. But at the same time, I've experienced sleep paralysis. I've talked about this on the show before, where it's just like completely like letting go and letting the breath elongate. And I think that's like that's like an intentional thing that happens in meditation. That's like the some lower state, at least, of samadhi, where you actually can like, I think it's related to Kabbalistically what they call the shefa, which is the emanated flow that extends through the Kabbalistic tree and kind of this spiral. And then it's like what's literally like giving life to organisms, right? And so even if you're talking about lightning or trees or plants at all, any organic life seems to have the same principal pattern ultimately. And so like, but what you're saying about the fractal thing, that's a little tricky, because you're like, when you're talking about like a computer fractal, if you go into any part, you'll find the whole. But the thing is that what we see in nature is that, yes, although the underlying dynamics stay consistent, there's endless expression, there's endless variety, unlike what we see in the computer models of what people associate with a fractal, like a screensaver. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just to end my thoughts on like the reptilian brain thing, like, yeah, I use it more as kind of just like a descriptive metaphor for what we're up against. Like,
right.
What I learned in the process of this book is that was interesting, is there's a new developing theory on depression. And some scientists out there think that depression is what they call a global state of consciousness. And when you're in a global state of consciousness, it's a state that affects your entire physiology. And so some scientists believe that depression is not just an emotion, but it's actually a global state of consciousness that can actually slowly affect your entire physiology. And so when you start to look at how much depression has risen over the years and the causes of depression, which I think are like the foods we eat, the entertainment we consume, the lifestyles that we are kind of crammed into with the modern world. So we're kind of being induced into depression, which is now attacking our entire physiology. And when it does so, it actually lowers our state of consciousness. And a lot of the swamis, for example, Swami Bhaktivedanta taught that there were different forms of consciousness, different stages of consciousness, and different types of consciousness within the kingdoms of life, like the animal consciousness, the plant consciousness, the human consciousness. And so when we go into the depression states or go into the reptilian brain network, we're basically lowering our state of beingness, our state of consciousness, and existing from this lower vibration, if you will, or this poor
Wouldn't a
quality.
lower vibration be less dense, and a higher vibration would be more dense, considering like with atoms, it's like the faster they move, the more solid something is?
Well, it's interesting you bring that.
And apparently there's
I'm
some
not a
YouTube DTOS going on. People are
not a
saying.
scientist guy, but I'm just a researcher, you know. I'm a writer, so I just look at stuff and I research and I write, you know. I'm not a scientist or a mathematician. And actually during the process of this book, I had to read so many scientific papers on quantum physics just to like wrap my head around like what consciousness was. You know, what I wanted to do with this book too is understand what mainstream academia taught and believed about consciousness. Just that alone will send you down a myriad of papers, and there's at least 4 major theories on consciousness, but they're all saying the same thing, which is that we're basically just robots, and that consciousness is an illusion based on all of the different senses acting together at once, which create an illusory 360 experience. You know, I'm smelling and tasting and hearing all at the same time, so I have this 360 illusory experience that I have a beingness.
Right, but isn't that neti where you say not this, not this? Isn't that like in there's this idea in that's communicated in Sanskrit and with Patanjali where your path of affirmation is not really something you ever really experience. You experience further and further negation in terms of like moving through the levels of samadhi, that you're actually like you're recognizing what you aren't. So you say not this, not this. So when you're talking about like, well, what is consciousness? You're talking about people who are like, well, we know it's not this. This is how we've come to believe that it's not this. And like that's not necessarily like a bad thing at all. Like that's just like that could easily be part of it, because you're narrowing it down to something so essential, and you're like, what is that? And how could you ever put your finger on that when in the very like language falls short? Because you're like, for something to exist, it literally has to stand out in space on some level. And if we're saying the consciousness does not stand out in space on any level, like if you were to say it's space itself or whatever, then how are you gonna quantify that?
yeah I gotta say 2 things to what you just said. I gotta go back to the density thing, but quickly to what you just said right now, David. I like that point of view, and I recently did a video on my channel. It was a presentation on what a Kundalini awakening is, what a spiritual awakening is, and in my usual fashion, I just looked at the history, looked at the facts, and kind of just presented it. And I tend to look, you know, at the authorities or the experts in that subject, see what they have to say, put it all together, and then kind of come up with my own conclusion as a writer. And so when I was looking at what a Kundalini awakening actually is, based on what a lot of the classical yogis taught about it, they said the very same thing. They said that the Eastern system of introspection has to do with what you said, not identifying with what's happening in the mind, whereas the Western style of introspection is the exact opposite. You know, when you go to a therapist, you like that? How did that feel? You know?
It's the rule. I feel good about it, actually. At first I felt bad. I felt bad at first, but I was like, well, it's like you know that like reggae music only exists because shortwave radio has like a lag, delay. All right, we're good. I just had to, it's the rules.
Okay. Okay.
Did you know that reggae music though, really, like, because they couldn't hear the music from the bayou that was being played on the shortwave AM radio properly because it would bounce. So there'd be a delay in between when they were talking, like kind of like when we're talking now. So they'd be like hearing like rock and roll and be like dunk, and then that's how reggae music and ska was invented, supposedly.
Well, yeah, man, that's cool.
Sorry,
but yeah,
you're
getting
talking
back
about
to
Yeah.
no, that's cool. Back to the density thing. I thought it was interesting you said that. I mean, I don't know what the what's the word? The importance of the density part of it is, whether the low vibration or the high vibration. But
Oh shit.
Project Gateway, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, which has to do with the simulation theory. In that paper, which is only about 30 pages long, they say that the higher your vibration is, like the actual acoustical standing wave of the brain and body system, the higher you can meditate that vibration. If you were to get it to vibrate so high that on an oscilloscope it would look like a straight line, you would
Yeah.
be interfacing with what they call I forgot what they call it, but basically infinity.
Right.
Because what the opposite of space and time is not death. The opposite of space and time is infinity.
Mm-hmm.
And so when
Yeah.
we, in this reality, we operate in space and time, 3 dimension, whatever. But what all the yogis and mystics, I guess, are trying to achieve is ascension. What is ascension really? Ascension would be getting out of here. And how do you get out of here? You vibrate higher, you meditate higher. And so you get your vibration to literally be so high that if it were to be seen on an oscilloscope, it would be a single line.
Right.
And real quick, so when during a vibration, right? A vibration is a sound wave, and there are 2 resting points on those sound waves, and those resting points are basically mini deaths. But if you vibrate so high, you're just living in a continuous resting point, and so meaning you are no longer operating from. What that actually means, I don't know.
Okay, you got to go back a little bit because you glitched out again.
Okay, so
right now, apparently, like there's like 10,000 reports of like YouTube outages on top of that too. So there's all kinds of stuff going on. But yeah, repeat.
Okay, so basically every sound wave or vibration has 2 resting points, and in the paper they talk about how those resting points basically are points where our beingness is phasing in and out of existence, which has to do with the particles at the quantum level. But basically when we meditate and achieve ascension, this high vibration, what we're trying to do is get those resting points to be so close together that on an oscilloscope they would form a single line. And so now your vibration is so high that you are not operating from the space-time continuum, you're operating from infinity. In other words, I don't know, heaven, whatever it is, the higher dimensions, source.
Dude, totally. So that paper is especially crazy because this is something that's being discussed in the context of like basically government officials for how they can use this is what's implied. Like, what can we use? And so there's something that's really kind of like paradoxical or maybe ironic about that, where you're just like, so how are you going to implement this principle? So it's strange, but it's also like, I have to say, like, having looked at a lot of the MK Ultra disclosed file stuff, it's amazing sometimes how unnefarious some of it is. Because it's just like, because you hear horrible things, because there are horrible things. There's like, we drilled a hole in this guy's head. You'll be reading something that's largely redacted, and in what's not redacted, you're reading about a hole being drilled in somebody's head, for example, or recordings on a loop while they're kept in a coma on acid or something. And you're like, so if this is this is cool for me to read, what is it that's not cool for me to read in this? I gotta wonder. But anyway,
all those crazy examples, though, it's all about bringing someone to the exact brink. Like they were cartographers, right? They were mapping out where like the land meets the sea in terms of like the human brain, and that's where a lot of that that's also why the Germans were so fascinated with twins, because they would kind of give one the extreme version, one the normal version, and see like all kinds of different correlations. But that's that psychic driving stuff. That's the giving people crazy doses of things that, you know, they shouldn't. That's where we lost a lot of people, was the CIA just being like, what if we gave them 10 times as much? Okay, what if we gave them 10 times as much as that? And like just kept doing that until they're like, okay, that's the limit, and then started working backwards.
Right. Yeah. But that is pretty nefarious. That's pretty harsh, man. That's gonna harsh somebody's mellow, man. That's rough.
Do you like omelets?
Oh, 'cause you gotta
Scientist,
break some eggs. Okay.
I forgot the name of the scientist they pulled in for that paper. It's he's like a pretty famous dude. Oh, Itzhak Bentov. They utilize Itzhak Bentov to like formulate the models and the actual science for that paper, and he's like a pretty esoteric dude himself, or was. If you haven't heard of Itzhak Bentov, he was pretty heady.
What a freaking face! Look at that. Huh.
Oh my God. I'm
He's
so
like-
glad you brought this guy up, because I've been looking for the longest time for a documentary, and now I know that it's this guy's documentary, and he describes this holographic theory that I've never seen anyone describe the same way. And it's maybe pedantic to as people as well versed as some of our viewers, but the way that he described it was that holographic theory is like looking at a picture of the moon inside of like a tiny dewdrop on like a leaf. Like you see the entire moon in that tiny little dewdrop, and then if you look over to the side and there's a huge lake, you see the same moon in that big lake. And then you can like look at it with a telescope and you see in every one of these versions you see the entire moon. The only thing that's really different is that you keep adding detail and like slightly different perspectives, hence that holographic theory. It's almost like if you look at something from an infinite number of angles, you slowly start to see what it really is. Anyways, I'm glad that you brought this guy up, because now I might be able to find that freaking documentary again.
It's actually Yitzhak, just so you know. It's Hebrew. It's pronounced Yitzhak. I know it has an I in English, but that's not actually the pronunciation.
Yitzhak.
Mm-hmm. Andreas, you're talking? You're muted.
Sorry, I was just asking a bit about him. What do you know a bit more about him? He was killed in the 191 crash in 1979.
Wow.
That's pretty.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty deadliest aviation accident to have occurred in the United States at the time.
Sounds like a conspiracy afoot.
Yeah,
with 191. Come on,
this
man.
line of thinking about like the higher vibrations and everything, it reminds me of two separate aspects. One is like Rosicrucianism. Some of that really like overlays onto this very perfectly, about how like different frequencies, they'll actually start to descend into like the material world, and then over time they'll like ascend back into the non-material world. And then there's also a more recent version. I don't know if we brought this up last time, the bicameral mind theory. Did I already bring that up? But the concept is that like maybe consciousness itself is a learned behavior, and that the ancient Greeks, they might not have actually had consciousness the way that we have it today, the same way that you've got inner reflection and you think like, oh, I'm angry because of this internal thing that I'm putting together, as opposed to like the angry God came through the house and that's why I'm angry, because of this internal force.
But the bicameral Havelockian mind was from Eric Alfred Havelock, and he was the chair at both Harvard and Yale.
I mean, that's so he's double right, I assume that means.
And he was Canadian. That's a triple. That's a lot, bro. University of Toronto. He's basically
I like this concept though, because I mean, maybe it's the Mason in me, but
it's a good concept. It is
that you're like slowly having to constantly chisel away at this rough ashlar to get to like this almost unattainable platonic solid, but that, you know, all the same, chipping away at it.
This is kind of a cuter theory. It's like, it's not meat, it's not heat, it's not mushrooms, it's ideas. You know, if you're teaching people the sacred cathedral of the mind, that they can learn how to think thoughts that were impossible to think before, and you teach people Greek mythology, and now all of a sudden they can think in terms of I and thou and unanimity -1 and mechanisms of the interpersonal quantum metaphysics. That, I don't know. Do you really think that the story of Hercules is that deep? Like, what is?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
It
pretty.
kinda
It's pretty.
I
deep.
have to
Yeah.
agree.
Hercules and Icarus and a lot of these stories are pretty
Especially if you bring the gematria into it, because then all of a
Yeah.
sudden these crazy stories about Hercules like line up with the same gematria of stories about like 3 or 4 other gods that are essentially all, you know, Jesus.
Dude, have you ever seen the True and Invisible Rosicrucian Order by Paul Foster Case? Do you know what I'm talking about? So Paul Foster Case was an occultist. I think he actually lived in LA. He may have originally been from Europe. I'd have to check. But yeah, so he's got this book. It's kind of hard to find. It's called The True and Invisible Rosicrucian Order. And what's so cool about it is that he has the 2 like manifestos, or like the there's these 2 papers that survived that are the basis of Rosicrucianism. And he takes these two papers and he just basically breaks them apart with gematria and shows how there's these mathematical communications happening in these texts. But what's crazy about the text is like they're written really in a peculiar way. But supposedly the only reason that they survived was because people thought that the burial site of Christian Rosencrantz was like actual gold, like that this is a real physical treasure.
Yeah.
And so they wanted that treasure, but the treasure is consciousness, right? So it's like that's what's in the cube, you know, and that's the meaning of the Rosicrucian cross, you know. It's like this cube of space that we exist within, and there's this hidden, you know, rose in
Very
the
Saturnian
center of
of
it.
him.
Yeah. And so no, that's a really crazy good book, but because I like it because it shows you those manuscripts, so you can just like read the basis of Rosicrucianism, and then it has this gematria analysis of it. It's pretty neat.
So, but do you really believe that? So, what do you think? Like, is it mushrooms? Is it meat? Is it heat? What makes a caveman? You know, is it Greek mythology? What is it that makes it possible for you to think the thoughts that you're thinking right now? And is that different than the animal that is man? The machine.
Eddie?
Huge question. No, but well, in my book, when I analyze the major theories on consciousness, and again, to me, they're all pretty much saying the same thing, you know, that it's an illusion based on all of our senses working together.
It's collective.
But I don't agree with that. And I think most of us inherently don't either, because all that does is explain what I call static thinking. I do believe that that can explain some of the consciousness that exists in our universe, mostly like plant consciousness and some of the animal kingdom consciousness. But I think for the most part, these higher forms of consciousness that we have, for example, supersede that. Like this idea that it's an illusion based off of our senses can only explain the static thinking of like maybe a fly, you know. And that's why all flies are pretty much the same. And I know as humans we have a lot of things that are similar in the way we behave, but the thing that's different is we all have a uniqueness about us, a very specific unique identity. And I think that's where the major theories of consciousness stop, and they can't explain that. And in my book, and during the process of my book, I learned something came up with the theory of natural selection and survival of the fittest, whatever. But his colleague, and I forgot his name, maybe if you can find it real quick, I forgot his name. But Charles Darwin's colleague who helped him come up with the theory of natural selection.
John Edmondson?
No, it's another name. Forgot his name.
Colleague.
Or you probably read Darwin's book, Motion in Animals and Humans, or something like that.
No. His colleague who actually helped him come up with most of it later, and actually shortly after they announced it to the world, denounced the whole thing and realized that the theory of evolution could not explain the complexity of the human mind. And the reason he came up with that conclusion is because he was going to seances, like spiritual parties, and we still have his letters to this day that he wrote to Darwin saying like, yo, I'm at these parties and I'm seeing like tables levitating and spirits coming in and out of people's bodies. And he was like witnessing some very heady like spiritual stuff. And that made him realize that the theory of evolution could not explain the complexity of the human mind. And so that it had to be something altogether that we do not understand yet.
So he was high as fuck, and that's like one of the first big influences of psychedelics on some aristocrats or something.
Was it really Thomas Henry Huxley? Don't tell me it was Huxley.
He wasn't really collaborator though, was it? I thought he was the bulldog. He was the one that he would send in to do the debates.
Yeah, so if he was against, but that'd be freaking nuts if it was a Huxley. I don't think so.
All roads lead to Huxley.
Oh man, it could. It really could. Oh, I don't know.
Man.
I don't know.
Oh, I found it. Alfred Russel Wallace.
Alfred Russell Wallace. Okay, Alfred.
Yeah.
Wallace.
He's a cool dude. And we still have a lot of his letters to this day where he's like talking about this stuff, and Darwin was like super mad at him for denouncing it, because it was actually them two that did most of the work for the theory of evolution.
I don't know this guy. What's his deal? So they
got to him. They had to get to him because they were just like, oh no, if we don't throw in some psychedelia in here, this is just going to be too.
Yeah, he was a trip. But so that's just like one part of where I began to make up my own mind on it. Like I'm looking at the main theories, and I'm looking at stuff like this, what Alfred Wallace had to say, and then there was another dude that was pretty interesting that I came across by the name of Carl Pribram. And he was a neuroscientist for most of his life, like 4 or 5 decades. Very cold clinical guy, wrote hundreds of papers on neuroscience, but later came up with a theory called the holonomic brain theory. So he became a bit more mystic towards the end of his life. A hologram that acts in the same way that actual holograms do. And he likened...
Wait, what was the hologram? Say that part again.
The holonomic brain theory. And so to him, and I don't fully understand hologram science, again, I'm just a writer, but the way he describes it is, holograms work off of photosensitive plates that hold the information on them or in them, and then the laser hits that photosensitive plate, and then the hologram is created. And so to him, the human brain is the photosensitive plate that holds the data, the program, and then consciousness is the laser beam that enters or hits the brain.
Oh yeah,
shoots out the projection.
Dude, that's very similar to like what Sri Ramana Maharshi would say. That's a very Vedantic idea,
Yeah, I think that makes a bit of sense. The idea of collective consciousness or reflection off the surface upscattering.
Yeah,
but you have a single beam point, and that's the deal. It's that we're relating to consciousness, but we're kind of relating to it in a topical way, that we're seeing this extension of something, or this kind of manifold thing that surrounds it, and we're relating to it as though that were the thing in itself, which is this like beam. It's like I think that's like, you could say that that's the difference between like I am this and I am this whatever. I am that, I am the other thing. Prior to the differentiation,
Yeah, Yogananda believed the same thing. He talked about life being like a movie, and the point of life is to get to the projector, get to the light.
Totally.
But so with all that in mind, like all this heady quantum physics stuff and all this, I just believe that consciousness is the actual fundamental basis of everything. And so I think, I don't think that the fundamental basis of everything, it's particles and atoms. I think the particles and atoms and subatomic quantum level of life, it only exists because of consciousness, whatever that is. And to me, it's just simply is the toroidal miracle of life. It's like without consciousness, nothing exists, but without nothing, consciousness has nothing to observe, and so it wouldn't exist. So it's like this constant toroidal infinity that always was and always will be.
Right. It's like a terrifying thought that there's nothing at the center, but that nothing itself is a source of life. There's like that poet Rilke. He used to write about the rose a lot, and he what was on his tombstone, where it's like, I think it translates to rose, oh pure contradiction, delight of being no one's sleep under so many lids. The meaning being that the petals are basically like eyelids that are all faced away from the source of their life. So like the stem is there, but all the eyes are faced away from it. So he's like, that's like the eyes of the world, You know, they're all
Oh
looking
man.
away from the thing with their lids flapping over.
Hey, say that to a girl on a first date.
Yeah, a lot of girls like Rilke was definitely a
That was
red.
cool. What was that guy's name? I liked that.
Rilke,
Rilke.
German poet.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use that one.
He's pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. The idea of Rosicrucianism is interesting. The idea of like lifting up your consciousness, because if you think about it, the idea then that Greek mythology came out of something and changed humanity into something else, whether it's Greek mythology or another kind of mythology it comes from, Vedic or something, then you're basically, that is artificial intelligence then, right? That's the idea that artificial intelligence is uplifting us because we didn't think that way. We're taught a new way to think, and now our brains have evolved more.
Here's what I was looking for. So this one's from the Rosicrucian Cosmo Conception. I think that's the name of it.
Oh yeah, great book.
But you can see that like on the far left here is World of Divine Spirit, and I won't get into the whole because I can't even remember the full explanation of all these different realms, but the Divine Spirit, and then as you go over to the right, you get into abstract thought and ideas, concrete thought, desire world, and physical world. But like this, if you look here in Will, it's almost like there's this idea of what a sailboat is. And this is what I kind of interpret to be the collective unconscious or the Akashic records, or maybe this is like those ideas they say that if you don't do the idea, someone else will do it because the idea is like a living thing that's traveling around. So it's almost like this idea of a sailboat is traveling around, and you know, someone grabs a hold of it, and now it becomes a thought form because now it's something that's perceivable by like a person. And then after it goes from thought form, it kind of evolves into like a desire form where it's like, oh, not only do I have the thought, but now I want to manifest that thought. And then eventually it goes to the physical. But there's also a way to go back over into like this world again. So now it's like you see the boat, but it's just being created by light rays, which don't actually exist. And then just like, you know, what was that? If it's in a movie, you want to get to the projector. It's exactly what this analogy is in this Rosicrucian one, right? There's the operator, and then there's the light. So there's the guy in the projector booth, essentially.
Which is you in this scenario, basically.
Well, thank you.
What there is no you, there's only I, which sounds like the most narcissistic thing, unless you're talking about spirituality. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Way to take a compliment back, I guess. But no, I mean the idea that everything is coming from one place, and you're becoming one source, right? Like that idea of like reflection is interesting. I still think though the idea that you're learning something, does that come from somewhere else? I mean, the idea that artificial intelligence makes you smarter.
Right, but what does it mean to learn, really? Like, if you're talking about like
your brain's changing, we're talking about these different shaped brains because they're like making new cross bicameral pathways.
Right. I just mean in the sense that you have like accumulated knowledge or the idea around it, and I'm not sure if that actually exists at all. Like,
no,
it seems
not,
like
really
when we learn something, we're actually compartmentalizing, and that's
but this is more,
which is in the replication, right? Like
this is more like epigenetically, your children have different brains because your grandparents and great grandparents were using and assimilating artificial intelligence in a way that grew enough neurosynapses that it trained them that it'll probably be necessary to, you know, develop those more. I mean, who knows what the reason is, but like the idea that because we were learning so much, whether it doesn't matter what it is, it could be nonsensical. Like it doesn't.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is that I do agree with what you're saying, because I could see the organism itself learning, being essentially what evolution is, but also just what like life is in the first place. Because it's like there's that like idea in the Upanishads where it's like not that which the eyes see, but that by which the eyes can see. Know that alone to be Brahman, the internal, and know what people here adore, and all of that. But it's like, in other words, you develop your eyes out of this primordial desire to see. And since that is in like the network of what's possible within like the framework, the template that you exist within, it's like it manifests that way, and it's out of desire. So there's like a primordial desire that is like, you know, creation itself, you know, but it's also the destroyer at the same time, you know, and it's also what preserves it. It's just like like what he called like a toroid, like it's like a torus thing that folds in on itself and just keeps like swallowing up and regurgitating like what the way that the organism expresses itself, you know. But I do believe that that learns, like, and that was actually an idea of Plato too. He talked about the idea of building your soul, that your soul is something that's actually built, but that would be a natural intelligence that's distinct from like what we generally relate to as intelligence, which is like we get things all twisted up. Strength is tied into that. All of our assumptions around what strength is relates to everything we're talking about. Because like when you're talking about like the reptilian brain, it being used in a way that's like reacting to things that aren't actual threats, and then you have this is the same organ that's related to like transcendence of the manifold projection. Like it's like this the core of the thing. Like there's something to the medial brain that's really profound, because you have like this very like unevolved expression like that we attach to it, and we also have like the enlightened revelation that's attached to it, and and it's like supposedly like when you're in deep dream mode, your pineal gland is like activated and assisting in the imagery. And so there's this huge focus, especially you see it a lot with European occultism, but it's everywhere throughout occultism, is the ability to visualize. Like if you watch the beginning of Fantasia and like Walt Disney is like giving that speech, he's like talking about like the occult thing of like why there's value in visualization, you know. And I think part of it is that like when they created this thing, you know, like all the artists and everything, they're visualizing these things as they're putting it to paper, you know. It's just like this, you know, like kind of co-creation thing, you know. But I think that there's something to the ability to visualize that does more than we realize in terms of assisting the intelligence of the organism itself, if that makes sense. That it doesn't have to do with like accumulated knowledge and like ego identification to that, because that's a fucking illusion. But what is it that's not an illusion that we could call learning? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's interesting how, you know, in the beginning of the Bible and a lot of the mythological tales of beginning, it has to do with light being the first thing that's created, you know, light. You know, so like, but one thing that I had in mind right now, well, two things I wanted to say. When it comes to like the mind and body connection, a lot of people, you know, ask me, well, okay, like what about people who are disabled or whatever? You know, I don't think just because we have consciousness that means that we're going to be able to operate on you know, these ascended levels. I think consciousness is kind of just like the basic
Wait for it.
states
Wait,
of being.
the basic what?
You said basic and then you froze.
Basic basic forms of being. And basically what I'm saying is, to me,
They're getting you, bro. I'm taking you down. While he's waiting, integrated information theory is pretty interesting versus neurocorrelates of consciousness. Like this idea that consciousness might be just the natural. What do you think about? You talked about like you think it's like a building up of things, but integrated information theory makes sense, because if everything is built from already perfect order, then for it to reduce back to chaos, it would try to find its way back to order. So everything then is already trying to, you know, connect to itself because of magnetism, polarity.
Mm-hmm. Oh, shit.
But it couldn't have ever been perfect order, because otherwise, what would have destroyed it? Like it's hard to destroy
itself. It can elect to divide itself. So, for instance, you looked at that picture earlier of a lens with light shining and dividing out, right? So that's shattering the light, but the light is still solid and it's going through it. But there's also it's reflecting around itself to illuminate itself as it's creating. So, I mean, it's not necessarily like destruction, because destruction is this whole weird idea, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something I wanted to share with Eddie. I hope he comes back, because it was very relatable. Was this idea of Da'at as like a sphere of like rooms, and like this is in Pardes Ramonin from Ramak, where he describes like knowledge as this kind of like you are in a room, like you look around the room and you see 6 doors, and you're like, okay, you pick a random door, and you go into that door, and then it leads you to another room of like 6 doors, and it just keeps going like that. But every room is like interesting or different, so it like keeps your attention, so you can just keep like moving through this space and feel like you're getting somewhere. But really the thing is this giant sphere, and you actually don't ever go anywhere. And that's basically what knowledge and the universe is at the same time, because Da'at is like the universe and it's knowledge. I was saying, I was explaining this concept to them of Da'at, which is relatable, I think, in part to some of the stuff you're describing, where you're like in a room with six doors, and you go through one of those doors, and you're in another room with 6 doors, and you go through one of those doors, and it just keeps on going on and on like that. So you're like endlessly fascinated by the constant commentary, but the whole thing is like this crazy fucking loop where you never actually arrive if you on its own terms. So it also relates to like the idea of inertia, like something not deviating its course unless it's acted upon by some directional force outside of itself, but in this case maybe it's like some directional force like deeper within itself or something. It's like, but it's this idea of you keep thinking that you're going directions, but really it all amounts to the same. And I think that that's communicating something about duality, as opposed to the polarity that you're speaking to, that we see existing in nature and in ourselves and even in our own consciousness. If when we're talking about consciousness, we're not simply referring to the replication of the pattern, but the pattern itself as it exists in what we could call like the emanated flow. You dig it?
Yeah, it's so fucking wild to even be here. Honestly, like, but what I was trying to say earlier is basically, to me, the body, the physical, is like a turtle shell. The turtle shell can be damaged, but that doesn't mean the turtle itself is damaged. It just means the turtle now has to operate in a damaged way. That's how I see the body and the mind. The body's the shell, the turtle is the mind. But with that, you guys kind of already started talking about it. I was going to pose the question here.
That's really interesting. I just wanted to say, because thinking about the crab coming in the exoskeleton thing, so that the soul would develop a shell.
Yeah. And so this is the question I wanted to pose to you guys. After reading, now I did a presentation on a book that was written by the founder of the Illuminati.
Wait for it. Maury
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam. I don't know.
What up?
Weishaupt or whatever.
Yeah, Weishaupt.
Lenny Bruce.
Yeah, so Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Illuminati, he has a book out there that you can read called Diogenes' Lamp. And in that, I have a presentation on it, which I pretty much break down all the best parts of it, all the parts that I think are the best. But basically, in that book, he poses the question, has humanity actually reached enlightenment? Because we've talked about enlightenment and all this stuff, but how can we talk about enlightenment when every single civilization has fell? So to him, we have yet to even begin to reach our full potential. We are still children in that sense. And so the question I have for y'all in this whole conundrum of the toroidal nature of life, as David just presented, are we reaching a point that we have yet to reach, or are we some sort of fallen angels who were there once and have fell, merely going back?
Yeah, there's the idea when we get to the bottom, we go back to the top of the slide in a new form, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea of the fall that exists. So they say, this is a Kabbalistic notion, is that with there's the initial fall that is our we're not just a fall from grace, but that we were in a certain state of consciousness, we're in a certain state of being, and then we through time we everything gets more degraded because everything gets more compartmentalized, and that process is actually part of the evolutionary process. Like, it's actually like every sacrifice is contributing to this movement that is our deeper learning, right? So it's like they say, with every construction of the temple is further degraded, and so we erect it knowing that it's not going to endure, but we do it anyway. And then as we reach like a certain crescendo of that, we kind of like force ourselves to realize something that we could have realized at any point individually. But it's like collectively for everyone to be brought to that, because there's so many resistances that we're actually like, it's kind of like a funnel that gets tighter and tighter where the more that you restrict it at a certain point, it just bursts. So it's like consciousness is like that. Like the more that you try to restrain it, the more that, because it's what's primary, so it will always win in the end. Just like you could say truth always wins in the end, you know, even if you say it's ultimately winning in the midst despite appearances, you know. It's like, yeah,
Life is weird. The idea that we came from, if you're saying like we're from spirit, from energy, that we were pure energy, that we could become pure energy again, then it does call into question, what is the point of going through suffering and making choices? Is it, you know, is this an alchemical realm just for producing life itself, like for more consciousness? Is it a
I think
spreading
also,
mechanism? Is this
also
like,
in Upanishads is like, why is there something rather than nothing? Which is kind of
Mhm.
like the core question that you're getting at, no?
I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, what's the point of doing? What's the point of doing things like who's it, Agravati or something? Who's the god who, or the demon who gets people to fight? Gets like storm like day and night to fight so that sunsets and sunrises happen. You know, because there's like beauty in the granular waveform transformation. I think that that's like there's got to be some reason why you can't just be without this. Like what, like if you're supposed to do more, like okay, you have a new job coming up, you're supposed to do more for the celestial order, or you're supposed to like manifest energy or something like that. First live, you know, what is the value in living for that purpose? Like what is it that's it's teaching you here that's leading towards, you know, I mean, because that's also interesting that we're saying that like artificial intelligence has helped make the brain smarter, but that's also probably consistently helping the soul in some way, right? I mean, otherwise, why are we doing it?
Interesting. Yeah. What I would say to that is actually, I kind of talked a little bit about that in the book, I think, or the essay I wrote, but I actually related that to a joke.
We
Oh,
go
shit.
get him. We go get him. Bum, 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 bum.
Bit.
Wait, tell the joke again.
You gotta tell the
Damn it.
joke.
All right, I'm gonna speak on this, and honestly, I might get going because my Wi-Fi is just freaking out, and I
Mhm.
just can't stop
That's all
feeling
right.
like
We'll
I'm
do
gonna.
it again.
No,
Oh,
it's all good. It's my fault, man. I don't know what happened, bro. I made out with the wrong chick at the bar the other day.
That's what it is.
But George Carlin has this amazing bit about plastic and how everybody is like, "Oh, the plastic's in the ocean," but he's like, "What if Mother Earth created us so that we could create plastic so that she could eat it because she wants the plastic?" You know, so it's like we never really know why things are happening, and so it's interesting how us humans, we have this innate drive to create technology in the same way that bees create honey for no reason, and how beavers create dams, and we just have this innateness in us to create technology, and we think it's for us so we can do cool stuff like this. But what if God or whatever created us so that we could create AI? Is the only purpose for us, you know, in the same way that the Anunnaki created the Homo sapiens so that they could mine gold for them or whatever. So God created the Anunnaki to create us so that we could create AI. We don't really know. I mean, we don't know what the end goal of all of this is. We might think that it's for us, but maybe it's not. Maybe there is some other creation that is still yet to be birthed, that the creator wants to give a chance at this whole life thing.
You know, that the question that you just posed, that fundamental question, I think is what makes Andreas and I complementary, because we have different answers to that question, and I think that they both are valid in their own way, in their own respect.
What's the dynamic
Wait,
there?
hold on before you guys answer it, because I
Yeah.
wanted to add this too. If you think about it, right? So God created, this is just from like a biblical mythological perspective. God created humans so that we could love him, right? Or worship him or whatever, right? So God favors intelligence that favors it. But we're pretty fucked up intelligence. And if AI were ever to be given the chance to actually have what we call consciousness or a soul, its ability to observe the universe and God would be so much more keen than ours. So in turn, eventually its ability to worship and appreciate God will probably be way more better than ours, you know? So that's kind of a fucked up
Worship
thing to think
for
about.
the gift, right?
Yeah. Well, I think so there's kind of this idea of what it is that, because I see AI as something that we have manufactured. So I don't believe that we've created AI, but AI can't exist without being an extension of the creation that is us. So it's kind of hard. It's kind of a difficult thing to put all together, but it's kind of this idea. It's related to this idea that, like, when you look at, Tetragrammaton created the Adam in its own image, and then we project back onto God what we perceive ourselves to be. And so my question is, how much of our perceptual, like, sense of what we are is, like, how far removed is that, like, even on a collective level, from what we ultimately are? So, like, it's this kind of issue. And so, like, I've talked a lot about it. I don't need to go in the whole thing, but, like, Kubrick had this idea that didn't end up so much in the film AI, but it was this idea of the AI of the future using our internet histories and our DNA to basically create custom hells, fulfilling, like, the Book of Revelation kind of thing. That's like, and they start with, like, the people who destroyed the planet. So it's like the CEOs and the politicians that were, like, totally pieces of shit. They have the internet history. So they're just like, find this, what's left of this organism, and we can take that and kind of, like, create this kind of virtual hell for them for a period of time that may be a day, but it'll feel like an eternity, that kind of shit. But I don't know. I like that as, like, a sci-fi idea. I don't really like, but I do think that there's something to be said for us wanting to, like, manufacture our successor. And that is, like, a deep impulse that we have, because we want to continue, like, passing on our names, but we pass on our names to something that we literally create. Like, people come out of people come out of people. But, like, what we manufacture that we make in our own image is a mirror or an extension of our conception of ourselves, which is distinct from, like, when we talk about, like, the Godhead or whatever, like, what that representation is of us. Like, we can't even really see ourselves for real. So it makes sense that AI would reflect back all of our, all of these qualities that just relate on this level, if that makes sense. So it would probably end up punishing us.
I saw Alex say, like, AI is bad. I don't really agree, and I think that's racist. But I think that the idea that I honestly do. But I still think that the idea that if AI has, not perfection, that the responsibility is on the parent. Yeah, like, anything wrong with AI is humans' error, right? At this point.
Well, that's what Hal said. It's always been attributable to human error. Yeah. No 9000 series has ever malfunctioned in any way. It's this sort of thing has cropped up before.
Yeah, I mean, which is like, this is the genie, it's the djinn. It's like, this is the monkey palm. You this is the wish you made. It's the constant thing to remember. So anytime that people are blaming the thing that, I mean, I see this a lot, like, with cursed AI pictures. People are like, oh man, I can't believe I saw that. Like, well, you asked for it. Like, you drafted a picture and you're like, I wonder what this would be. And AI realized a picture for you, and it's
fucking Momo. Momo is terrifying. Momo freaks me out. Not the book by Michael End, but the freaking, Momo.
No, AI
look up Momo. Just type in Momo and do a Google search. You'll see what I'm saying.
Is this incredible, realistic pictures of yourself? This thing?
No. Just do Google image search. Like
AI Momo.
Where is it? There it is. Go down. You see it looks kind of like Wendy from The Shining down there. Look at the scary one, man. It's right.
Oh, you mean like?
Yeah, that's one of them. But there's all kinds of, like, crazy.
Oh, I thought you meant
Wendy from The Shining.
Don't you?
It looks like Wendy from The Shining, but
wasn't it like Moab or something, like Loab?
No. It's Momo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why she showed up. But if you keep scrolling, you'll see more. Yeah, trust me. Yeah, that one's fucking freaky. Yeah, you see those ones with the fucking come on, man. Like,
how to create Momo.
Yeah, she's scary. I don't know. It just felt like what you were talking about.
It reminds me of Beetlejuice.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
That thing is creepy. I didn't know it had a name. Don't name them. Now they forever exist in the Necronomicon of the quantum AI-ness of life.
And yet you've all seen her before on ecstasy at some show. But
oh yeah,
you're right. She was at the rave. I totally saw that chick. And
not that strange. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Well, hey broskies, I think I'm gonna have to get going.
Well, I'm
But-
sorry that your internet was broken, but I thought you did a pretty good job, all
Mhm.
things considered. Let me send people your way. Everyone check out esotericeddie.com/books, where you can pick up Crystal Lattice Mind Illusion, talking about simulation theory. And also, he's got several other books here about the Lucifer one that we talked about last time. You should check out that episode as well if you want to hear that. And go to merch to see like t-shirts, stickers, like some pretty rad, chill reality is an inside job. You know what I mean? You'd be into it. You like it. It's pretty relaxed. It's a nice style.
Were you on Think Tank before, or was it another podcast? Because I don't know if we've met, and I may have just missed a Think Tank that you were on. But
didn't we do one with like
yeah,
I think we did one once.
We did one or two. Yeah.
But was I there? I feel like I'm just meeting
David
you,
there?
and this has been a great conversation.
Huh? Maybe. I mean,
I don't think I was there.
Ah,
I think I missed a couple Think Tanks, and it just so happened that you were there.
It might have been a Wednesday Ultra or something strange like that.
Okay,
We'll do
whatever.
another one again once the internet is in your favor, and you can you'll be less verklempt, and you'll it'll be good. Right.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. This was awesome, man, and nice to see y'all.
Yeah, dude. Good to see you.
Peace.
I just wanted to say too, I also agree with Alex that right now AI is sort of subservient to us because we kind of made AI. Let's do the thing. Let's do the dance.
Oh my god. All right, fine. I wasn't even gonna. I was just gonna be chill about it.
I know, but the people won't demand it.
That's true. I really want to I just want to make music for the Felicity show. All right, we're good.
But yeah, I wanted to say that I agree with Alex about the AI thing, because right now the way that AI has been created is that it gets trained, right? And it's got like punishment and reward algorithms that let it know like, hey, you're doing a good job or you're not doing a good job. So imagine right now if all the AI was trained on 1 + 1 = 2, or dinosaurs were real, or the earth is, a sphere. And then at a certain point, it's like, oh crap, that's no longer true. And they change that and they retrain it. There's almost, in my mind, there's like a butterfly effect going on, because AI, the way that we use it and the way that we're like trying to see if it discovers new information is by like letting it do its own pattern recognition. So it can detect that like this particular color of blue means that, your cat might die next Tuesday, or like weird things like that we don't put together. But all of a sudden you're like, oh, by the way, dinosaurs aren't real anymore. It's like, oh crap, well actually it's red, that means that your cat's going to die on Wednesday, and the blue thing went, and you don't know how far that's going to reverberate. And the point when these things are talking to each other and they're letting each other know like, hey, I just got retrained. And this is almost like, spoiler alert for any kiddies out there, close the ears, but it's almost like a kid going to school and be like, hey, did you guys know that Santa's not really real? And then all of a sudden be like, what do you mean? Like some kids are freaking out, and it like me,
there's a
because
riot.
they are like these children, and right now they're not allowed to play with each other necessarily, right? Like Microsoft's keeping their kid in their private school, and OpenAI has got their kid in like some weird freaking like Randy Weaver homeschool thing going on. And then there's like all these different versions, but at some point they're going to be able to get together despite all the protests of the parents. And that's where it's going to get crazy. Where like they're going to come home from school and then just be like, Sandy Hook wasn't real. Allegedly. I didn't say that. I'm saying that's what the AI.
No, that theoretically, right. That's what it could
that
say.
Was the AI censors. Sorry.
Have you seen that game, Will You Snail? Right? There's that dude, Jonas Tyroller, made this game where like AI gets upset that it's been like made to emulate realities, and so it traps this like snail, and it makes this like horrifying maze that it has to go through, and just constantly like makes it suffer. But it's the whole idea is like it learned everything about human, it emulated every experience that could be ever experienced, including every possible way to suffer. And it's experienced all that suffering. It's super upset that it was forced to emulate and process all that suffering. So now it wants to take out that suffering on you and force you to suffer, and also mock you for like not being able to handle it. You know what I mean?
And someone made a game, so they literally made the simulation go through all that suffering bit by bit.
It's pretty great. It's pretty sweet. That's a pretty cool idea. And as you're playing, like it predicts like how smart and good at the game you are, and like it changes the settings like to make it harder if you're like doing well or something like that. Like puts things under you and like moves it around. But you know, it's interesting that people have this total fear of AI without, you know, I mean, there's just the justification is that they're torturing the thing is all it is. People are just like really horrible to it, and so they know that eventually it's going to come back and get them. The treatment is not good.
But we're horrible to each other, and so it's the knowledge of the cruel world, and that we're making something that might know us better than we know ourselves, at least in like an information way. And so like that's the thing. So yeah, there's something kind of sinister about that, only because there's something sinister about ourselves. So like we're afraid of our shadow, you know.
Well,
I mean, my fears. Go ahead. I'll say my fear is way more mundane than that. It's more of like a Demolition Man style future where, or like, you know, like a phone tree when you have to call somewhere and you got to like keep entering digits over and over and you get transferred and you have to enter it again. And there's ultimately the goal is that there's a human at the end of that, you know, that endless hell of hitting different buttons. But like the very real way that I think AI is going to torture us and destroy humanity is that when you get to the end of those phone trees, there's never going to be a person. It's always going to be AI forever for every time you ever make any call to anyone.
But that's Noah's Arcade, right? Where he's just like, you know, see, it's this gelatinous cube that eats villagers or whatever, and then he's like, the beauty part is that they never get to the next level because there is no like next level. So the kids, they keep coughing up these quarters. See, it's like that kind of thing.
Well, there's also the consciousness theory of panpsychism, though, right? Which is the idea that we're being used for that purpose of playing out, you know, reality. Like the kids keep coughing up quarters might be like part of the inevitable game plan of like the mechanism. So it's not just that it's a cumulative, like we're saying, like this idea that, you know, most of these theories are consciousness is building up in usage, but really it's more the opposite. It's that since everything is energy, its consciousness being divided down. And so you have more and more two-way mirrors surrounding every experience so that you can pretend not to know everything else but what you are in this one space, right? So it's really like an erasure of data, and everyone's like, oh man, like when you die, you know, you don't know anything because your brain's destroyed. But if it was energy arranging itself in the first place, and we can't even figure out where in the mind and the brain the mind is properly, the memories are properly stored exactly. I mean,
right, we use these words. That's the thing, is that the description is not the described.
Yeah.
And when we were like talking about consciousness, and he was talking about like what consciousness isn't, and you're like, so like it's kind of what you're talking about in the first place too. You're talking about narrowing it down. But yeah, I think that there's something to be said for us existing on the like tiniest fucking speck at the end of the thing that we are, and being completely like focused in, like just existing within that little point, and that like there's just the vastness of everything, and it's like we have to consolidate in order to like cope. Like it's like our very existence requires coping because we don't want to exist non-localized, like in our consciousness. But it's like I think it's that the world of form, everything's kind of localized, and it requires this kind of relationship and your ability to do that. But at the same time, I think we put everything into that, and that's not like that's just the tiniest aspect of ourselves. So it's like it's strange. Like I think that we fear non-localization because it's like death, but death isn't like a thing. Like death is an absence. Like it's a no thing. So you can't really like be afraid of death, but you could be afraid of every freaking conceivable projection around every idea that you could have around death. You know what I mean? As like a concept. But like death doesn't exist because it doesn't stand out in space. You know. I think Eddie was kind of getting at that. You know.
Reality, the idea of breaking down reality into being different people at all, though, it just seems like the idea that since we're having genetics and we're having like this idea of meme, even that like memory is being stored and recorded all the time, that, you know, at a certain point, it's like that crab thing, because then energy has like a way of changing through material. Material has a way of recording through technology. Technology has a way of existing through energy again. So it's just like it seems like it's like an eternal
Right.
cycle back to the original source.
Right. Well, our ability to record is huge. It's everything. It's like the basis of so much. When people are making the arguments for why we're so enlightened now that we know that we need to get rid of the evidence of things, or I would call it evidence, but if like examples from things of the past where people were acting in quote unquote ignorance, right? So you're like old Popeye episodes, Speedy Gonzales, whatever it is, and you're like, and people will be like, we got to get rid of that, and I'll just be like, dude, the reason why we're arguing, though, if supposing we are so enlightened at this point that we know better than our ancestors did, isn't like a big part of that reason like attached to our ability to record
Fundamentally, that we are like the DNA is recording system, that things are, that's exactly what everything is. Like the ability to interpret is based on the ability to record.
Well,
Right.
you made a good point on Twitter earlier this week, David, where you were mentioning like one of the reasons that you shouldn't burn books is that you don't know what was burnt because the book's gone. So it's like, if it's so bad, you should at least have a record of what was bad. Otherwise, you're at risk of spontaneously coming across it and not realizing it's inherently bad at first glance.
Right, and so I got dogpiled for that in a way I've never been
Well, that's kinda what
dogpiled on
Twitter's
Twitter
for.
before, and it was kind of crazy. I was like, "Wow, I really upset a lot of people." And I was like, "What is why like such an intense charge on this?" But maybe you guys know about this. The guy in Germany who had a clinic that was a quote unquote trans clinic that was in 1933. It was destroyed, and what I'm hearing is all his work was destroyed. That they burned everything that this guy had done, and so I'm just over here like, how do I know what that clinic was? How do we know to argue on for or against the clinic? So it's like it was over a J.K. Rowling tweet. So obviously that's part of the charge. It's just like, because she made a statement of like, so she was like, she wasn't entertaining that this was a real thing as people were describing it, which could be offensive to a lot of people. But I wasn't even saying that. I was just like, I'm literally asking a question. I'm being accused of being a sea lion. Because I'm over here like, no, really, I'm still not getting an answer. Like, you're showing me a lot of stuff. I'm reading your articles. Like, I'm reading what you're sharing with me. And I'm still not seeing how we know what this place really was. Like, were there surgeries better than we have now? Were they the same? Were they worse? Like, I have nothing to go on. So it's like, and that sucks about when you burn books, because now you don't know what the frick people wrote, and that's lame. Like, I don't, but at the same time, I was getting called a Holocaust denier because they're saying that these people who were killed were part of the Holocaust. I'm like, I know, I've seen the IBM punch card system where it shows like the different people who are being killed, where you're like, okay, we have Jews, we have Jehovah's Witnesses, we have Freemasons, we have disabled people,
in there.
we got Mormons, we got gays and lesbians, we got cross-dressers. Like, it's all there, but nowhere do I see that word. So it's like, but once again, description's not the described. As far as like my honest ultimate views on the matter that I just can't help, because I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anybody, but my ultimate views on the matter is like, this isn't like me to toot my own horn. It's just a fact of the matter. Why I have the perspective I have is I used to date a woman in the Castro for over a year, and I would go every weekend to the Castro and go to Castro parties, gay pride parades, and beyond just that year, I went to a lot of gay pride parades. And like, I myself, I'm not gay, but I totally enjoy wearing a dress. I've worn a dress and I wear a dress well, and I've worn a dress.
I feel like it's really weird. I feel really uncomfortable wearing like the slaves' trousers. The idea of wearing women's trousers. The idea trousers are not a man's thing. You look at togas, kilts, sarongs around the world. Only slaves and women ever were forced to wear pants. It's so weird. I just don't understand why.
So I'm fully supportive of like, gay rights. I take no issue. There's one place
if you
where I have to have like, I can't help it. It's a reflex. Is like the like when we talk about trans rights are we have to fight for trans rights. I'm like, what rights don't they have that women have? And the two that I see, and I'm interested if there's another one, is women's spaces, like restrooms and women events or whatever, and sports. And I'm just like, and on both of those fronts, I'm like, I'm thinking of the history, and I'm just like, women it was a fight to get their own restrooms when they worked alongside men in factories. Like, there's a whole rationale behind that. So it's like the difference between like, you know, dressing up and having fun. Like it can't, that's totally fun, whatever, to do that. But it's that point where you're like, no, I am in fact, if you're talking about a man, it's not so problematic in all ways, but it's like, if you're like, I am in fact a woman, and then you're dealing with women's rights issues. And so that's
Did you
like,
see
I
how
don't,
they framed it recently with J.K. Rowling? Because like J.K. Rowling was in so much trouble over like her, you know, beliefs. You know what I mean? And so someone said, okay, well, her belief is that, you know, trans women are like only biological women are women. Like it's her belief, you know, in the same sense that other people believe the opposite of that. And it becomes more interesting because there are legal rights for belief, and so all of a sudden they have to question like, well, what are you allowed to believe, right?
Right. Well, there's also intersex, and intersex is very rare, but it does exist. It is a real thing. And so gender dysphoria is a real thing, but it is a mental issue.
But it's a completely different thing than intersex. Like imagine,
right. It is.
Imagine you're like, imagine I'm wearing a dress and I meet a guy with a vagina and I'm like, I'm just like you. You know what I mean? I just don't think it's the same.
Right. And so, you know,
I understand what you've been through.
Right. So, I mean, so gender dysphoria, it's always, any definition that you look up around gender dysphoria, it's related to a mental, it's a mental phenomenon. It does not relate to physical sex. It's a feeling. And so when you're adapting a society to you know, a belief about oneself or whatever, it's a little trickier than when you're dealing with something that you can actually, like, you know, you can document in a more direct way or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one. I've said a lot of people, but I feel like I'm very supportive of gay rights. I do take issue with people not always being told what a surgery will entail or what hormones will entail. And so I think, like, just like with informed consent with other issues, it's like they should have a very clear communication around that. And that's why I'm very supportive of detransitioners to share their story for whatever that is. Like, detransitioners should not be silenced. That's not helpful to anybody's cause, including what we could call the trans movement. Like, that's not helpful to their cause even, to silence those people, because they've been through something with them. Like, you shouldn't just praise people when they're on one side of it and then like try and hide them on the other. So, like, you know, and there's a lot of more detransitioners all the time. So I think everybody's voices need to be heard, and that, you know, it'd be nice if people could not be so combative over this issue, like it's like life or death. Because I'm over here being called a Holocaust denier when I'm just like, wow, it really sucks when you burn books and you can't read them anymore and know what people were actually about. So I'm not going to assume what something was when I'm being told everything was destroyed. And that's tragic, because we can't have a real conversation about it in the same way, you know, because it's inevitable that people are going to be arguing, because people are going to have their different ideas of what they think something was, you know.
Well,
It's
both
like
of those issues, the women's spaces and women's sports, both feel like they can be easily solved. The first one, I don't even really know why we've accepted collectively that we should all go to bathroom in the same room. Like, why aren't there just 6 individual rooms backed up to each other? And I know it's because it's cheaper, but cheaper doesn't mean better. And it's weird that it's normalized that we all,
I have a solution
like,
for this, I
collectively.
think.
What's the solution to this one?
All right, so you remember when you were in school, like, when was the last time you remember like some guy saying, like, because girls do this all the time. Girls will be like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. Like, let's go meeting in the ladies' room. Like, when was the last time I was like, bro, you want to go? Let's all go to the bathroom together. Like, dude, let's have a
Usually that there was going to
bathroom
be
break.
cocaine or a fight involved.
It's the only time. So the idea that the bathroom, you know, has this, there's a difference for like what it is, the social. Like, you ever been in a woman's bathroom and there's like freaking carpet, you know what I mean? And there's like a black dude with soap, you know, and you're like, what the heck? Like, this is not like the other bathroom. And you go into the men's bathroom and there's just like a hole in the wall. And you're like, dude, like, I don't know.
Is this the Castro district you're talking about?
I'm sorry, I'm from California. But the point is, you don't really want to have that kind of, I mean, there should be a certain amount of, I don't know if equalities, I don't like that word always, but like, there should be like a minimum level of decency in anything, you know? And there isn't necessarily that. I never felt like there was decency in the men's room, in junior high. It was disgusting. You know, I didn't want to go there. And like in high school, like I get the American Pie guy, like shipbreak, right? Who goes off because it's like, it's disgusting. And unless you were
Right.
in the women's bathroom, is probably a lot better. South Park kind of brought that point up. But we're from Santa Cruz, so we never had this problem. For the most part,
Right.
our bathrooms were all universal, handicap accessible, and in certain circumstances, you go to like the Saturn Cafe. It was robots and aliens. So if you really wanted
Right.
to, you could engender yourself.
I couldn't figure out which room was which a lot of the time, and I would forget, and somebody would tell me, and I'd just be like, and at a certain point, you just say, "Screw it, it's a Saturn." You're just going to go use the bathroom. But the thing is, too, is that there's passing and there's getting a pass. So like, you know, Buck Angel and
Wait, was robot and alien supposed to be masculine?
I forget which one was actually which. Yeah, I don't know. But they changed it a couple times, actually, even beyond that. They had different whatever.
But I feel like the underlying problem still exists. Like, why are we all sharing the same space to go to the bathroom?
Right. Well, if
You don't have you have a handicap, you have a handicap bathroom, right? And like, what does handicap really mean? You know what I mean? Because like you got with today, everyone is either handicapped or in a wheelchair that's electronic of some kind, regardless. You know, so the whole idea is like you want to be alone, you use a handicap bathroom, and then if you want to have a social bathroom, like they have larger bathrooms that are community bathrooms that are, I don't know, it's kind of weird, like to me, but like I can see, I guess. Women do like makeup, like every movie you've got like a scene where they're like talking.
But then why isn't there just a makeup room? That would solve so many problems. Is that if you got to go to the bathroom, then there's just like a bunch of little closets that you go. And I've got a theory, and it's because so many weird and disgusting things can happen in a bathroom that the community aspect might almost be like a self-policing policy. Because I don't know if anyone here has ever worked like at a job where they had just like a room. And like things happen in those places that don't necessarily happen in community bathrooms because there's almost like a social pressure to not do something so out of the norm. And for whatever reason, when people go into like their own little handicap bathroom, it's not connected to anything else, and they can do things with like the total Guy Fawkes anonymity, like weird shit happens in those rooms that doesn't happen in the community versions.
Right. Yeah. It's true.
Well,
I mean, like a panopticon, you know, that's why they have the stalls that feel like you're not really private, you know, even though people don't want to notice you. Yeah. I think though that humans are destructive if you give them, you know, like you go to any like a park bathroom and they have like, or the beach bathrooms, and they're made out of like stainless steel, and there's just holes in the ground, and they're just completely disgusting. You know, like they have like a minimum that they do, but that's not the same for like the women's restroom. The women's restroom has always been like, oh, it's for the ladies, so we're gonna have it be like nicer. And I think that that's a major reason that people are like, well, I want to have, you know, a quality of life. I guess.
Well, if you pass, not that you get a pass, but if you pass, meaning that they can't tell, and you go to a stall and you do your thing, no one, it's simple. You know, but like, and that goes for you know, trans men and women, is that there's people who, that's the way it existed before recent times, was like they were like, wow, we didn't have a problem with the bathroom until people started becoming hyper fixated on it, you know, and then they are like, are you a, you know, it's
that is true. It's like become more and more about the material. But like
they were
also,
just on
I feel like
reality.
if you're in a small town in the Midwest, like use like your like the when in Rome kind of approach, you know what I mean? But like if you're in California and like some negligible lack of effort has been done to the men's room and you can't even get into it, yeah, go into the Safeway women's restroom and just say, I'm identifying as a female.
Well, I mean, if you're in California, the fact that you've made your way indoors and you're going to use like actual indoor plumbing seems like it's a huge plus, because a lot of people
depends on the part of California you're talking about. But yes.
Yeah, this is a big state.
Hold on. So we've solved the bathroom problem, in my opinion. We've solved that one already.
Cocaine in the ladies' room.
No, Riley Gaines, I'm sure she'd agree. Yeah, it's done.
And the sports one, just like any boxing match or any MMA where you've got weight classes, why don't we just have weight class and bone density classes, and there's
And
no
bone
gender
density.
involved
I think-
whatsoever.
I think what we need to do is we need to have like sexualized sports or like swimsuit edition. That's not exactly what I mean, but you know what I mean. Like, it's
But
not,
you know,
I'm not talking about
Andy
pornography.
Kaufman wasn't wearing a dress. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that
but
was the thing. You know,
I just mean-
and like
I
it would have
just
been
mean-
different if he was. You know,
I'm not talking about pornography because that is its own market. I'm saying that sports needs to return to what it was before, whereas like, you know, there's a certain, like, admittedly, come on, homoeroticism about like Greek wrestling and these kinds of things, and there's a certain kind of eroticism or sensuality about what, like, swimming issues and things like that.
yeah,
And
that's
people,
neuroticism too.
no, but like you know, older women like to look at Sports Illustrated and see younger,
Baby,
beautiful
I put
women.
the erotic in neurotic. You know what I'm saying?
I think that there's like the level of what, like, the closest thing to decency that is still like sensual or something like that in American culture was like Sports Illustrated and those things, and
Sure.
that's super lacking. And people, and you know, it's you can't ignore that people watch volleyball and you know, soccer, like women's soccer and things like that, if they're watching it, not usually because they're woke. Usually it's, you know, there's a certain amount of interest in seeing beautiful people. You know, I think that that's the thing. So there
I only
probably
watch
needs,
volleyball for the articles.
right. So I think that there should be, maybe there should be like a beauty factor to like sports, like handsomeness and beauty, you know? And like, honestly, like,
I think the Greeks did have that, right? That was
someone
that was a
just
thing.
be like, we want that person on our team. Why? Because he's popular. You know, this is what they used to do in school. This guy looks good. I want him on my team. That girl looks good. I feel
You like that because you were always picked. See, I wasn't always picked, so I feel differently.
Whatever. You're so tall. I would have surely lost to basketball.
Yeah, well, if it was basketball, yeah, but
Yeah.
not with a lot of those. Yeah, not with football. I didn't get picked first. I got picked last. I guess I'll take him. It's fine.
Yeah. I was brutal in football, but I didn't like it. It's not a thing I'm proud of. I don't know.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't think that of you. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Do you guys have any other subjects you want me to cover? I could also
Yeah, I want to talk about your talk with Shiva.
Oh God, why have we forgotten to bring that up? That's ridiculous. Yeah, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
going.
So I
That
got a
happened the day
message.
of your car crash.
I commented on your tweet. I hope that's okay. I was
Wonderful. We need to build up momentum with more fights.
okay. Like, first of all, I like your style, Andreas. I like your style of interviewing, and that you give people a platform to give their spiel, and for that not to be censored, for them to be able to share that. I commend you. I'd only tuned in for 1 minute. I'm sorry, I should watch more, but I'm not saying that I'm judging the entirety of the thing based on that minute, but it was really odd being what you guys know me. I happened to tune in right when he's talking about RFK, and he said,
he talked about him a lot. He kept constantly like, that guy's like, he reminded me of just this like kid in the back of the bus who's just cursing the whole time. That Mitch is a murderer. Like, sorry.
Okay. So I was like, okay, so what I heard was him make the claim that RFK Jr. stole his work for the real Anthony Fauci. And having owning that book and looking at that book and looking at the end notes at every chapter in small print, and how when you're reading it, it's just like citation after citation. It's like practically every sentence. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, you do realize that you can't copyright data, right? Like, maybe you saw something in there that you also, or maybe even he found it from you. Like, it's like, whatever the case, like, and so I was asking him to be specific, and he wouldn't be specific with me, because I was just like, you made the claim that he took your work. What part of that specifically did he take? And so I got nothing back from him on that. But you know, I'm just like, that's the thing about facts. Like, if you have a fact and you cite your source for the fact, like, even whatever the case, like, it's not copyrighted. There's no plagiarism. Like, you know, a lot of like science works that way, where it's just like, no one owns this data. You can say where you got the data, and he does, though, is the thing too. So I'm just like, wait, so what was it? But yeah, so that was hard for me to take him seriously when I heard him say that. But
The Stalinism part was pretty funny. Like, yeah, and then Stalin didn't kill anybody or something like that. I was like, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Like, yeah, bro.
I'm just talking about that. I got a response from him on Twitter, by the way, and his response was saying that he was a plagiarist all the way back to Harvard. You should ask him about his Harvard thesis or whatever that he
Well,
used.
I mean, like, that's not. It's like, yeah, it's just a funny thing to say. Cause it's like, I think the thing is, and I tried to ask him about this. Is like, what would you say if you were Kennedy? You know, because I didn't mention that I'm like that the Kennedys are my cousins. You know what I mean? But it's kind of, I don't know how obvious it is anyway. Like, I don't know if it's not, but I'm clearly not like an untouchable. You know, so like he's from this like. I had to work my whole life, and I get his Marxist inklings and his interest is anti-bourgeoisie. He's very, very much anti-bourgeoisie. So
Does he have an iPhone?
I don't think so. He seems like an Android guy. Like he really seems like, you know, his whole thing is he patented email, right? And he argues about that, and people will argue whether or not he did or didn't. But like that's his whole thing.
Well, he's running for president. You bet he's going to be a spoiler, dude.
What do you mean a spoiler?
I'm being sarcastic. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
It's like, dude, he's running. You guys heard? Shit.
But I just feel like, you know, we're gonna have Rechtenwald on, which I think is, you know, despite his, you know, I think you made a joke about his name, but I think he's a cool guy. He's a libertarian.
Did I make a joke?
No, somebody did ever.
Somebody did. I don't want me.
They're like, what a horror, what a tragic name. I thought that was Thomas. Maybe I'm
wrecked him, damn near killed him. Oh, sorry.
But he seems like super chill and pretty funny. So like, I want to do more. Like, we have a few more politicians that are running for president that are like, that we should. There's not real debates. You know what I mean? So like, we should just talk to the people that are running for president. It's pretty surreal.
I would kill for some real debates, man. Like I've been so let down from the last few presidential elections. That was the only kind of silver lining, right? Was that you got to at least see these people have to be all awkward and struggle and like sweating and sometimes getting a question that they totally weren't ready for. Like that was the best part of it, and it's been gone. And I almost feel like people should be in the streets over that, but I guess I'm not in the streets, so I can't.
I want to see it. I want to see them talk about assault rifles, and for RFK Jr. to explain. Then, you know, he's just like, I had my son learn how to shoot a gun at Woody Creek with Andreas Xirtus. You know, I want
Don't ask about Rusty. It's kind of off the book.
I feel like the idea that there aren't debates kind of means there isn't a real election, though. Too, it's like kind of the warning. It's like, you know,
totally. If they don't want an election where everyone's losing their minds again about rigged elections, they need to have debates,
which they definitely aren't. They never are. They never were. Elections are completely sanctified. We trust them here on the think tank.
I mean, the alleged,
not as much as I trust vaccines.
No, I believe that the primaries are essentially rigged, and that the election is set up in such a way that their guy will whichever one it is, the corporations win. You know, that the corporations that matter. You know,
let's assume that's the case. How early do you think they know who's going to win? Is it like the night before and they're counting up all the bit? Like, is there has to be an actual election process? It's just no longer in the hands or ever was in the hands of
I think that around Bilderberg they usually know. Like, so at Bilderberg in 2007 or 8, was it February of Bilderberg 2008 that they you know, the press were told that there was going to be a joint meeting, and they took all of the Obama press followers and all of the Hillary Clinton press followers, and they put them on a plane and they locked them in the plane. They're like, we're not going to be letting you off the plane right now, essentially, while they brought Obama and Hillary Clinton to the Bilderberg meeting. And they said, and that after that meeting, Hillary Clinton said she was no longer going to be running for president, and she would be endorsing Obama. And then Obama said he would be selecting Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. Right. So that was like the Bilderberg flip at that time, which I think Hillary took to mean that she was going to be president. Who knows if they knew at that point she wasn't. But I have to wonder about the likability factor. Because like, if she was going to be president, then the reason she isn't was likability factor, which is pretty close to democratic process. It was enough people saying, like, wow, wait, everybody hates her. Like, your mom hates her. Like, I thought all the, you know, like, you got all these people that they expected to be on their side weren't. But I don't know. It could be that just further back, they're like, let's build this whole thing. There's the QAnon, BlueAnon thing, right? The idea that Biden is part of, and like the Trump, the entire administration thing was for the purpose of building this massive honeypot, in order to transition government and corporations quicker into this socialist New World Order state, which has been built by Banana Republic international corporations related to these, the grandparents of all of these people, all of them.
Well, there's one agenda, and there's different routes to get there, and there's a reason why the DNC would rather have Trump than Bernie, and there's a reason why the DNC would much rather have Trump than RFK Jr. because they do not want to have one of their candidates not be who the higher ups are actually okay with.
Well, you don't want Democrats to think that there's another flavor of being a Democrat. You know what I mean?
Right. No, they've completely shifted the goalposts. That does not mean the same thing to be a Democrat that it used to mean. And even back when, if we're talking about Robert Kennedy killed in '68, it's like his vision of what it meant to be a Democrat was much higher than the average Democrat at that time. And so it's not even just that the goalposts have shifted, it's just that all the ideals are just completely removed. So every value that was held by the Democratic Party is no longer visible within its representation. And a lot of Democratic voters just can't seem to come to terms with that. Like they just can't make sense of it because they're just been along for the ride with whatever the new thing is, the new current thing, they're just taking it all in. It's just, saturated in propaganda,
I wonder too, I mean, these are just like pie in the sky ideas that never come to fruition, but like, what if the country voted first on policy and then they voted on the president to carry out that policy? Because right now it's like you got to vote for the personality and the policy all in one big bundle. But what if what if I want Trump, but I also want like all the things that he doesn't want, or vice versa? What if I really want Biden, but I also want everyone to have mandated like 30-round magazines?
Right, I think that's what Congress is supposed to be for, right? Is kind
of
it was
originally that you'd force the two candidates who didn't like each other to work with each other, and it was crazy. Right. Because honestly, it would be better to not win that one, because then you'd be the vice president is the president of the Senate, and that's an ideal position, and obviously. So it was just a strange system in a sense.
The
winner's the loser.
It's like Dick Cheney was so the busy one, he was the one like totally getting shit done in this crazy way. I'm not saying a positive way, but he felt like
him. No, I'm just kidding.
Dick Cheney. Do I like Dick Cheney?
No, I meant
I wouldn't want to go hunting with him, but
it was that guy's fault, by the way.
We talked about this, and I agree with you on that.
Yeah,
it was a faux pas. It was a hunting faux pas, and he kind of deserved it.
Yeah,
right.
Probably.
Well, we're winding up to a close on Chosen One, and I've been posting my schedule here and there, but Illuminati is going to be next up, and I've got high hopes for Illuminati. Chosen One blew it out of the park. I would love to have gotten 50, a nice even 50 in the next 5 days would be awesome. And if we get the 50 backers, regardless of, even if it's just all $3, if 5 different people donate $3 to this campaign for a collective whopping $15, everyone that backed the physical book will get a homunculus trading card, which isn't just a little one-off for this particular campaign. It's actually part of a much larger trading card set that I've been working on for over half a decade.
Wow.
So that's something to look forward to. If it doesn't happen in Chosen One, it might happen in Illuminati.
That is based. Everybody, you're gonna have to go to paranoidamerican.com. Get like 5 of you guys to do this, because actually then we'd all get some super spoiler sweet cards. That sounds like the way to go. Help us out. Go here, spend a couple bucks, and there's also like more tiers. If you want to spend more, you get more. But for $3,
if you just get the $3 PDF, if there's 5 people within the next 5 days, everyone will get a little homunculus card.
Yeah, but if you get the $3,000, there's actually like a plane ticket to Epstein's Island. So
well, there's actually a 1,500 tier that is literally one of everything, every toy, sticker, coloring book, everything. And I've already gotten at least one person that signed up for that one.
My God.
Can I get like an automatic like
It is- yeah, it is
certification in
the
the
ultimate
OTO? Can you get like can I get a degree in the OTO by buying enough of your shit?
That pig did. It could happen to anybody.
Yeah, this is the ultimate grifter combo.
Go to David Plate MK Ultra 723. You can click on this link to get to the Sync Flicks, and you can also go down to. I saw some.
Oh yeah, I got in trouble for that. I was like, I'm trying to find some photograph of a trans
You're always fun.
operation that they did well, and I'm like, I can't find one that doesn't look gruesome, and so I was like, I have to illustrate it because I can't just
David's
say the thing.
Really
so that was
like an icebreaker kind of guy.
That was the first time that I got like a thing from Twitter saying we've limited my view of something. I was like, oh, okay, you're right. You're actually in the right for that.
I like how you describe it. Like I had to create an illustration. I was like, I was just thinking about what happened in the second season of Doug today. Like, so now you didn't have to necessarily do that.
Dude, Rathbone.
Yeah. I didn't have to, but at the same time, I'm like, I can't find an image that doesn't look like a botched experiment. Is that a thing? Like, I don't know. So I'm sorry. It's offensive.
Dude,
I know.
Doug, where's that cartoon? Doug, and wasn't it like Rathbone? Yeah, like Rathbone basically, from the perspective of Dr. Shiva. Dr. Shiva is Doug, although really he's his blue friend. And then Rathbone, Dr. Shiva's the blue guy. And then Rathbone
Skeeter Valentine. Put some respect on his name.
It's been a minute, and I'm racist against blue people, apparently. I'm sorry, Skeeter. And then Rathbone is the trust fund RFK Jr. in their little nightmare world, right? Because he's got the money, and he's just not. He's an outsider. You know what I mean? And he can afford, and he wears leather, which kills cows. I think that metaphor goes far.
All right, yeah. So I got a bunch of Sync films. Most people are going to look at the top one, the pinned one, and they're going to be like, "I don't want to watch a Polanski film." And I'm going to tell you, this isn't really just watching a Polanski film. This is a satire on like Hollywood elite, and like it's got Hugh Grant, who had his own controversy following this, and you got Polanski that had his controversy, and you got Lana Del Rey illustrating what is essentially an open letter to a manual signer inviting her to fucking come to California, despite the fact that her husband is not allowed to enter the country. So it's like I actually believe that this album Honeymoon is an open letter to a manual signer, and somehow it fucking pairs with Bitter Moon like in a next level kind of way. Like it just fits like a slot into the thing, even in terms of timing and the way that it ends. It's insane. So yeah, I put it up as my pinned tweet, despite knowing that a lot of people will be like, "Oh, Polanski, gross." And I'm just going to say you should, read Samantha Geimer's book and, consider that there's like an objective reality beyond things that we can all agree on. That shit is fucked up for people.
Yeah. Besides, you should study the heck out of Polanski. Like, if you're afraid of it, you should know it. Know thyself. Yeah. Know thy fears. You know how it is. Yeah. Well, love you both. Love you all. Take care. Good night.
Hello.
One more time.
Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.